of going into high school and stuff like that, um, I used to always be bullied by my older brother. Joey, he'll probably tell you all about it if you ever ask him. I don't know what it was, Maybe it's just like a brother thing where we grew up and we kind of bashed heads, but him and his friends, I guess, I always had like this weird vibe around him and his friends, so I always felt like maybe he's talking shit or, just telling people about me, what I am or what I'm not and whatever. So, sometimes whenever I'm around him and his friends, I always get this weird vibe, and I never really, I guess you could say, really liked it. But, the real time when I started getting into the gym, or seriously kind of like getting into the gym, was around my high school days. When at first, during my freshman year, getting stronger, it was just something to be cool, like, yeah, I could bench press this much, yeah, whatever, right? But it wasn't until like I kept getting bullied by my brother and I started getting like these weird vibes from him and his friends, and every time they come over or every time I see them, I always get like this, I guess, like a little curtain shut down or whatever, when I started feeling like I wanted to get stronger, like seriously, because he used to always make fun of me for being weak, and I really wanted to dedicate myself into the gym by getting stronger, and as I started working out, I started noticing like working out did something else too, as stupid it is, your high school stressors, I guess, or whatever that is, whatever the case that is, it helped out a lot with that. Like when I was working out, I didn't have the energy or the anger to be mad at stupid stuff anymore. Like my brother, the goal was always to beat him, but every time I train, I just always stopped thinking about it. Again, all these team sports stuff, like I was always pretty dedicated. I always worked pretty hard to get somewhere, but sometimes your team wasn't good enough, or if you call for practice, like soccer practice, every Sunday or something like that, and you show up during every practice even though you wasn't one of the main star players, and then you show up during the games and you don't get to play, or we lose and then everybody talks about why we lose, and it's because nobody shows up for practice, and it's just like, you can't really rely on other people when you think about team sports. So, when you're in the gym and you're lifting weights, the only person you can kind of technically rely on is yourself, right? So, when you think about lifting weights, or let's just say in general, before I started competing, if you bench press, if your goal was to bench press 225 and you couldn't get it, you can't blame it on anybody else but yourself, and then again, that also goes and carries on to competition. When you go to a competition and you can't get something, you can't technically blame your coach, you can't blame the guy that wrote your program, you can't blame anybody else but yourself, because you yourself should know the kind of work you need to put in to get the numbers that you want, right? So pretty much it's just all kind of carried over if you really think about it. But truly, the moment when I wanted to get stronger or just started lifting weights was because I always wanted to beat my brother. And I think when I was a junior in high school, him and his buddy, I still remember this day, it was Cool Moore. He was really getting into cars, during this time, my brother, and they came over to the house while I was working out. And Cool wanted to see how strong my brother was, and his previous max was like 245 or something like that, so he started working out a little bit, and he put on 235. And when he put on 235 and he brought it on his chest, he couldn't budge it at all. It was like literally stuck there. He racked it, and it was my turn. I took out the fives, and it was 225. And when I brought it on my chest and I blew it up, I kind of knew, like at that moment, during my junior year, that I outbenched my brother. And it was like a satisfaction that I didn't even need to tell my brother, you know what I mean? Because my whole goal was to always beat him and to make him know that I'm coming for him, to show him that, I'm gonna be stronger than him, just you wait, and he used to always talk shit about, no, I'm never gonna be that strong. And when I finally surpassed him, I didn't even need to tell him, because I already knew, he already knew. And that's kind of, I guess, when the weightlifting started. Education is key. You got to go to school. My grandfather, or Grandpa Nang, he died, and before he died, that's what he told us. You know, he had liver cancer from drinking too much, and he said on his deathbed, you know, for all of his grandchildren to focus on education, you know, do something with their lives so we don't have to suffer like he did. You know, we don't have to work as hard to make the same amount of money, or perhaps even make more money than he did. And you know, his words when he passed is always something that I'm always going to remember about education. And then again, you know, being reinforced by your parents and your family and stuff like that about how important education is because of the way the Hmong people grew up in America. You know, you think about all these war veterans who put their lives on the line to save all these Americans to be able to move to America. And when we finally moved to America, you know, they couldn't speak English. They couldn't find a job because they were Asian, and they couldn't speak, you know, English. But at the end of the day, they were still able to provide for their families. My freshman year in college, I mean, I had, 8 classes, and I made 1 B. You know, I had 3 A's and 1 B during the first semester, and during the second semester, I had 2 A's and 2 B's during the second semester. So my grade point average was pretty high. I had my scholarships and everything kind of paid for me, so you know, as long as I kept good grades, you know, everything was going to be fine. You know, I was going to be able to do what my grandparents wanted me to do, what my father and them wanted me to do, and all that fun stuff until, you know, the summer before my sophomore year in college. You know, that's when, you know, some stupid stuff happened between my mom and dad. I kind of don't really know all the details because that's kind of between them. But, you know, they got into, I guess you can say, like a mutual divorce. And, you know, during that time, I guess you could say we did have money. You know, there wasn't really much that, you know, we couldn't get, you know, even though I was working crazy hours at a fast food restaurant, you know, closing and stuff like that, as, you know, from my age when I was 16 all the way up until I was about 19. And, you know, when I was 19, going into my sophomore year in college, my parents decided to get a divorce, and my mom just all of a sudden said, you know, I can't live here anymore. I'm going to move up to Minnesota. And she went up and left. And my dad, because he didn't know what to do, you know, because he was being a during the time, he left. He left to Minnesota. And the funny thing was, his 4 kids who were all living this, or 5 kids, I take it back, were all living in that same house that they were renting in Georgia. And this is when my brother Joseph just came back from college. He just graduated and got his bachelor's degree, and he came and he was living with us. And my parents and them just decided to leave, you know, divorced, and then left us. And we didn't even know what the hell happened. So we were just literally living in the house, and we didn't know what was going on. A few days later, they told us, you know, technically they just told us we need to move out because they weren't going to pay for the house anymore. You know, they're worried about their own things, and then we just technically had to figure out what we were going to do. I didn't really know what everybody else was going to do during that time, but I didn't know what I was going to do. You know, I didn't know because the problem was I didn't know if I was going to move with my mom or my dad. And, you know, during that time, living with my parents for like 19 years and always seeing them being happy, and, you know, our families always being together, and having them break apart during, I guess, the most crucial moment of my life when I'm trying to finish college, something that my grandparents and, you know, my father always told me is like, what's going to lead the way. And, you know, he was actually what I guess broke that chain, you know, when I was going into the second year of my college. And I didn't know what to do. You know, like my life dream, I guess, to become a doctor or something like that, to make them happy, just fucking went down the drain. I was getting good grades. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to live. You know, during that time, I guess this is when I really, you know, I never really thought about it during the time, but, you know, God did send me an angel, I guess you can say that. You know, I was a Christian during the time, but I didn't really talk to God that much during that time. And, you know, I was training a guy, you know, his name is Shao. Him and Franco, most people probably know him by Aries. You know, he's a pretty famous Atlanta popper. And they used to always come train at my house. I didn't even know Shao during this time. I just knew Franco because I used to b-boy. When we used to be in we created this group together, and he used to always say, I met Shao for the first time, and he came to train at my house for like a month. So I only knew this guy for a month. And when my parents decided to do their little move to Minnesota, and I wanted to stay and finish college at UGA because that's just something that was, in my head for like the last 19 years. I asked him if I could move in with him because, during that time, technically we were living in a house where we wasn't supposed to be living in. We could have gotten kicked out or was evicted any time. So technically I was homeless during this time. And during that month, Shao, whenever we used to go work out at his house, before my parents did their little funky thing, was he used to always offer us food after we got done training, and I used to always say no. During that month, me and my brother Joseph had like $100, I think, or maybe a little bit less, $60, I think. And we spent that $60 on ramen noodles and water, and we ate that every single day, during that month when we were trying to figure out what we was trying to do in our lives. And yeah, it was hard, and I never really accepted food from other people until that day, the day when my parents left and we were running out of, ramen noodles at the house. And Shao, he said, hey, we got done training, do you guys want to eat? And it's funny, we said no for like a month straight, but every day when we got done training, he always asks us the same thing, like, are you guys hungry? Do you guys want to eat? Are you guys hungry? Do you guys want to eat? And I was like, look, I don't know when's the next time I'm gonna get to eat. So I put my pride down for the first time and I ate. And I had a conversation with him that day. And I asked him, hey, my parents decided to get a divorce and they're being stupid right now and I might need a place to stay to finish college, and I was wondering, even though I don't know you that well, could I stay with you? Maybe this is what God wanted me to do. And I started living with him and my grades started going down because, what do you expect, The one person who I always believed knew what was best for me and, who always told me to do this and this and this left my life. And my grades, I got a C for the first time in my life. Training at the gym at UGA, and, there was a little sign that, talk about powerlifting, and, we're good friends now, so I guess I could kind of talk about it a little bit more, but I contacted Brooks Conway and I asked him, can I join the powerlifting team? And he says, however, have I ever competed before? And I was like, no, I've never competed before. I don't know nothing about powerlifting, but I would like to learn. And after that, he didn't message me anymore. I'm just like, well, right? Messaged him again. I was like, so, okay, do we have meetings or do we have anything? I didn't get nothing from him. And a few months later, Mark Freeman, I guess he was the president of the UGA powerlifting team during that time. He posted up like a little poster at Ramsey saying like there's a powerlifting meet. And I looked at the weight classes. I'm like, 148? I weigh about 149 right now, so why don't I just enter and win? And I remember talking to Shah about this. I said, it would be so funny if I enter this powerlifting meet and I win, and the same people who I was trying to contact for me to join their team asks me to join their team, right? And I ended up winning. I beat the guy who used knee wraps. And right after that, they asked me to join the team. And during this time, I just thought it was very funny because I asked them if I could join the team or not, and I got shut off because I'm not a lifter, or I don't have any powerlifting experience, so they shut me off. And now that they actually see me compete or lift, they wanted me to be a part of the team. So came back home and had a conversation with my brother Shao, and I was just like, dude, what do you think? He said, dude, I told you they were gonna ask you to join the team. I was like, well, what do you think I should do? And he was like, well, if they want you to go compete, they can help you out. Why not? It's not gonna hurt. And I thought about it. All the BS that was going on in my life during that time. Why not? Right? So I entered. I trained. I met Sherman. at Quest Gym. I met Josh Rohr. You know, during this time, I was literally a nobody, and I won nationals. And that's kind of how my powerlifting career just kind of flew off. But one of the reasons, you know, I kind of want to talk a little bit more about, like, I guess why I'm so passionate about powerlifting. You know, during that time, actually, before I got really good at powerlifting, you know, I did become like a huge alcoholic. And you can ask like all my Georgia friends about this. You know, a lot of them don't even want to drink with me just because I drink so crazy. You know, and that just technically had a lot to do with like my anger and my loneliness and my sadness of just, you know, as a father, you know, you would think like who the hell would ever leave their kids just to die out because of their own selfish reasons, right? And you know, I just can never, you know, every night, you know, especially during the weekends, you know, I just couldn't comprehend that. And I used to always get freaking crazy, you know, like triple, quadruple shotguns, you know, drinking bottles of liquor and always going home super hungover the next day and couldn't eat for the next 24 hours, throwing up blood and throwing up black stuff, you know. So I was a pretty hardcore alcoholic during that time because that was the only way I could cope with what was going on in my life, you know, because everything that I ever believed in went down the drain, you know, college and school and my parents and, you know, all the love and stuff like that. We all separated, you know, all this about family. And, you know, during that time, I didn't hear nothing from no uncles, from no cousins, from nobody, you know, and everybody knew that my parents got a divorce because every time I go to family meetings to help them out with their picnics and stuff like that, the first thing they ask me is, hey, how's your parents doing? Are they doing all right? And I already know the question why they ask me that. You know, the reason why they ask me that is because they know my parents got a divorce and they just want to know if they got back together again. You know, whatever BS that was. So, you know, during that time, I did become a hardcore alcoholic, you know. You know, I have like a lot of famous drinks that I used to do in Georgia. You know, Fobo, where I put 2 beers in a huge shot glass in and I gulp it in one. You know, and everybody just knows me as the guy that drinks. You know, one of my friends even said, you know, whenever he sees me in Georgia, he always wants me to pop a toast because I just have that kind of a rep, you know. But now that I've gotten a little bit older, you know, the drinking things kind of went away. Well, I wouldn't say it went away. It's more like the reasons why I drink is different now. You know, I don't have that anger. I don't have, you know, a reason to drink where I want to forget. You know, the reason why I used to always drink was because you know, I had a lot to think about and I just wanted, you know, if I could just forget for one night how hard that was for me to just kind of accept my father not being there for me when I needed him. And you know, I had a couple of phone conversations with him too during that time, and you know, I told him I was struggling and I didn't know what to do with school, and he told me to quit. And that blew my mind too, you know, the guy that's always been pushing me to do this and this and this and this, and he told me to quit school. And from that moment on, you know, I just literally just stopped contacting him and I became alcoholic. Drunk a lot of beer. I didn't know what to do in my life during that time, but the one thing that kind of kept me okay and just not going crazy was lifting. And I kept at it. And everything just kind of kept getting better and better during that time. So yeah, it was a hard time, you know, and that's probably one of the reasons why I kind of really love powerlifting so much, because it just kept me sane, you know. And it was God's plan, to be honest. You think about all this stuff. I mean, I met a guy who didn't even know who I was. You know, we only met each other for a month, who let me live with him for the next 4 years to finish school. I met all these friends of mine. We got drunk together. We hung out together. We ate together. We suffered together. We got good together. And I can never forget them. You know, one of my friends, Joe Capolino, you know, every time we're at a meet and he sees my Asian friends with me, he's always like, dude, you and your Asian guys are badass. You know, it kind of seems like those guys would die for you. And you know, it's kind of funny he said that because it is true. I kind of believe my friends would take a bullet for me and I'll take a bullet for them too, just because, you know, I say this a lot, and some people probably get annoyed I even had a guy who told me, stop saying that because you're not. But I was, when my parents got that divorce and I was living on my own, I was a loser. I used to call me, Shao, and Franco like the three musketeers, the three freaking losers, because he didn't have a job in that time. Franco's popping career kind of sucked in that time, and I was a freaking nobody. I didn't have no family, no friends who invited me to nowhere. I didn't do nothing, and I had to accept reality for what it was, during those 3 years. All my, I guess you can say, the enjoyment of my college years kind of went down the drain, and I had to grow up really freaking fast. And I always tell people, during that time, I was a loser. I didn't know anybody. Everybody that I knew didn't really come hang out with me anymore. And the only time anybody ever asked me to go do anything was to drink. Everybody knew I drank a lot. They didn't know why I drank a lot, but I drank a lot. So whenever they needed someone to drink for them, with them, for them, they always called me up. And I was the guy. I always tell people, I was a loser. And nobody knew who I was until now, and I think that was all a part of God's plan. If I was this good without suffering, maybe I would have never appreciated some of the things that I've gotten, and all the hardships that I ever done and experienced all the way up until now was exactly what God wanted me to know to become the man that I am now. And I want to pass that knowledge on. I don't want people to suffer like I did. I don't want people to go through that. And if you did, I want people to know that you can kind of continue doing what you want to do, it's tough. I don't want to say my life is harder than someone else, or, I don't really like it when people talk about how hard their life is compared to mine, because, we each all have our own journey. Some people can handle stuff more than others, some people just, they can handle stuff. And I feel like everybody's got their own journey, so I don't really like to judge people, but just know that we're all people. We all suffer the same. We all have our own story to tell. And I was a loser at one point, and I wanted to change that. And for the culture that I'm a part of, the Hmong people, I want to show them that we all are the same, and we can all become something greater. We don't want to let our parents' divorce or this education thing and everything kind of get in the way of what we want to become, because I feel like God gave me this path to become a powerlifter, to do this gym thing, to teach people, and have this passion, have this strength, have this ability in order to pass on to someone else. And I don't really think this is a coincidence, because again, everything kind of just felt a little bit too perfect. After those 3 years that I lived with Shao, I kind of just accepted the fact that I needed to grow up. Even though I hated my dad, when I was 19 to 20, literally his guts for leaving me, I can't forget that he did raise me for 19 years. And, some people just got some things on their mind and they got to handle it, just like me when I was going through that. So every year, I used to always go visit my parents, and during the year when I was going to finish college at UGA, things just couldn't go right. Like I was trying to get my stuff in. I even started like 3 months earlier than I normally do with my loans and stuff like that, and it just didn't go in, and they were going to charge me extra money to go. And this is just God saying, like, maybe college isn't for me. So I didn't want to be a bothersome to Shao anymore. I didn't want to be a negative impact in his life. Be another head inside his house eating all of his food, who ain't going to school anymore, who ain't got no plans. So, my parents, my dad, or, I had a conversation with my dad in that time. I said I might move up, and he let me move up with him. But during the times when I used to go visit them all the time every summer, they would always get into arguments, my mom and dad. And, I think, again, all the hardships that I went through, like what they say in the Bible, rejoice in your sufferings, because suffering creates perseverance. Perseverance creates character, and character creates hope. And everything that I ever went through was something that I felt like strengthened me a lot. And when I went to go see my parents again, and when I actually moved in with them, it's kind of funny too, because my parents used to hate me for drinking, but one night I got really drunk and I told my dad how it was. I don't really remember what I told him, but my mom told me I was crying and my boogers are coming out, and I was just literally just bashing at my dad. And whatever the case was, my mom and dad got back together. You know, God kind of answered my prayers, you know. He created the man who I am today. He gave me my talents. He gave me the path. He brought, you know, he answered my prayers by bringing my mom and dad back together again. And technically right now, my entire family that broke up 4 years ago is back together again. And look at me, you know, Team USA powerlifting, and I'm trying to create a gym where I can kind of share my life and my experiences and my ideas on how to get strong, you know, and whatever I can get, because I don't want people to suffer like the way I suffered, you know. And yeah, I just really just want to make this gym thing happen, because this is my passion, you know. I'm gonna die for it. I keep, you know, people probably keep thinking like, you know, it's 1 in a million, you know, that people make it. Well, you know what? Everybody that's born in this world is 1 in a billion. Why are you gonna cut yourself short by saying, you know, he's lucky, he made it? You know what? Let's not talk about luck. Let's just talk about, this is what I want to do, and I'm gonna make it happen. I'm 1 in a billion. You know, I'm not gonna let this, oh, that guy got lucky, that's the reason why he made it, get in the way of me getting to where I want to be. And powerlifting just at the moment is a talent that God has given me. And you know, every time I want to go back to school, something always stops me. You know, every time I want to make some big moves, something always stops me. But when I talk about lifting, the road is just open and everything just seems to go right when it comes to powerlifting. Even though I'm not aiming for it, everything just seems to be going the right way with powerlifting. So, you know something? Who cares about college right now? You know, I'm just gonna say straight up, I'm probably not gonna go back to college, you know, even though I get a lot of BS from people saying I need to go back. I think God gave me this talent and I'm gonna go with it. You know, every little step was hard, but I made it. And it was all part of God's plan. And yeah, that's why I like powerlifting, or I love powerlifting, and I want to share it to the world. I want to share it to anybody who's interested, and I'm going to do this until the day I die.